Hi, my name is Lesa Cline-Ransome, and I am the author of the Finding Langston Trilogy. The Finding Langston Trilogy began with the first book, Finding Langston, and it was followed by the second book, Leaving Lyman, and now we have the last in the trilogy, Being Clem. Being Clem is the story of Clemson Thurber Jr. And we first meet Clem in 1946 at Haynes Junior High School in the debut novel, Finding Langston. It's when he first appears as the title character, young Langston's schoolyard bully. But through shared grief and love of the library and books, Clem and Langston become pretty good friends. But Clem is kind of conflicted because he's also friends with young Langston's bully, Lyman. Now, Clem is funny, he's smart, he's likable, but he's also worried that he can never live up to the legacy of his hero sailor father, who has died in the Port Chicago disaster. This tragic naval base explosion that killed hundreds of Black servicemen during World War II who were loading explosives in the San Francisco Bay. So he's trying really hard to cheer up his grieving mother, and he's trying to fend off attacks from his two older teenage sisters, Clarice and Annette. And he's scared to death of the very thing that he's supposed to love and hates that everyone is treating him like a baby. He's Clemson Thurber Jr. to his mom. He's Clementine to his older sisters. He's CJ to his cousins. And he's Clem to his friends, Errol, Lyman, and Langston. But Clem isn't really quite sure which one of these he really is. He knows that Clemson Thurber Jr. means that he's supposed to be like the person that he doesn't even remember, his dad. It's hard to live up to this legacy of someone that you can barely remember. And so here is the story of young Clem, who is struggling to just figure out what it means to just be Clem. So I'm going to read to you the very first chapter, at least a part of the very first chapter of Being Clem, when this tragic explosion occurs and turns their life upside down. By the way, I should mention this cover and all of these phenomenal covers, all three of these titles are illustrated by my incredible husband and illustrator, James Ransom. Okay, now, chapter 1, Being Clem. There's 2,341 miles from Chicago to the San Francisco Bay. And even if you happen to catch a ride in one of those 44 Silver Street Pontiacs with the shiny front grills that look like big old teeth smiling back at you and drove as fast as the wind, it'd still take you about a week to get there. 2,341 miles is a lot of miles, but it ain't so far when an explosion that happens in San Francisco, California, lands you right smack dab in your lap here in Chicago. I was sleeping good when that explosion happened. I heard loud knocking on the front door and Mama's tired voice asking, "Who's that?" I sat up in my bed knowing there was no way company could be knocking on our door before Mama even called us in for breakfast. And then I heard her slippers scraping toward the door. Just as soon as Mama unhooked the chain and undid the bolt, all I heard after that was the screaming. Soft-spoken is how most folks describe my Mama. She speaks her mind, don't hold back on the truth, but she's just as quiet as can be. Before that night, I never so much as heard her raise her voice, let alone scream. There she was, shouting like she was broken in two. By the time I hopped from my bed and made it to the front room, where all the screaming was coming from. My sisters were already there, plus two men I'd never seen before, dressed just alike, holding their hats in their hands. They looked like the picture of my daddy, my mama kept in a frame, hanging over our kitchen table. Soldiers. They were holding up my mama by her arms. A piece of crumpled up paper was lying on the floor in front of her. Her head was rolling from side to side. Clarice, my older sister, put her hand out to stop me. Going back to bed, Clem, she said, staring at Mama. But even she didn't sound like her usual mean self. So I stood there behind her, watching our Mama. It looked like her legs stopped working the way the soldiers had to hold her up. Get her some water, son, one of them said to me. But I was too afraid to move. I heard the water running in the faucet behind me, and it was my other sister, Annette, filling up a glass. She brought it to the soldier, and he tried to get my mama to drink. Annette stood on the other side of me, close. Mama stopped screaming, but her head was still rolling from side to side. Clarice stepped away from me toward the soldiers. We never had white folks in our house before, and these soldiers looked funny standing here in our living room, holding up our mama. Do you have anyone you can ask to come over and sit with your mama till she's feeling better? The soldier asked. Looking at Mama, with her head rolling every which way, I didn't think my mama was ever going to get right again. It's okay, Clarice told him. We'll be fine. She walked to our mama and sat her on the couch. I could see Mama's hand shaking in hers. Clarice is only 5 years older than me, but talking to the soldier and sitting on the couch calm as could be, she looked like the mama, and our mama looked like the child. Good evening, then, the soldier said to Mama, both of them tipping their hats to her. Our deepest condolences. Condolences. I had never once heard that word, but I knew as soon as the soldier said it, he was telling us he was sorry. Over the next days, I watched my mama sit still as a stone in that one spot Clarice sat her in. I don't know who dressed her, who combed her hair, how she did her business. She didn't look like she even remembered who I was. Folks from our building and our church came in and out all day and night, whispering soft words away from Mama's ears. In the kitchen, where they left cakes and pies and chicken and sandwiches on the table, explosives, and they still don't know nothing. Nothing to bury, I heard one of the whisperers say. My mama wore black like any day now we'd be going to a cemetery. Clarice kept up her boss and telling me and Annette to fetch this or get that or give Mama room to breathe when I tried to sit close to her and hold her hand and make her remember who I was. Reverend Maynard came over and prayed with Mama every day, and he might as well have been praying by himself. Mama sat with her head down, looking at her lap like it was the first time she'd seen it. Finally, my mama's sisters, Aunt Dorcas and Aunt Bethel, came from Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden, they were like our mama's mama. They got her up off the couch and had Clarice run some bath water. Hot as you can get it, they told her. When our mama started her moaning and crying, they held her tight with her face in their necks, letting her tears run down their dresses, shushing her with, come on, Cecile, and rocking her and rubbing her back like she was a little baby. Why does Mama have to be quiet if she wants to cry? I whispered to Annette when they were busy shushing. I think they're afraid she'll start falling out. You know how the ladies do in church when they get the spirit, Annette whispered back. That made sense to me, but Mama didn't look like the church ladies with their hands up in the air and their heads thrown back, praising. Mama looked like she even forgot who God was. Next thing I knew, my aunts moved me out of my room while they moved in. Clarice is 14 years old, Annette 13, but the way they looked when I showed up at their bedroom door with my blanket, pillow from my bed, you'd have thought they had to share a room with a newborn baby instead of their 9-year-old brother. Aunt Dorcas said it's just till Mama gets better, I told them. Annette made room for me in her bed, but not before Clarice rolled her eyes. Our aunts got our mama eating and talking just a little bit again. One thing I know is Clarice didn't get her bossiness from our mama, but she sure got it from our aunts. It's like they bossed our mama back to herself again, and that was all I needed. When I got up early one morning while everyone was still sleeping, I walked out to the front room and saw Mama sitting up on the couch. "Clem?" she said so soft I could barely hear her. I walked over, making sure that was my mama talking, and stared at her puffy face. She almost looked like the mama before the soldiers knocked on our door weeks ago. She reached out and pulled me onto her lap. And even though I was too big to be sitting on anybody's lap, I let her hold me tight, and I rubbed her back, just like I saw my aunts do. Later, I found out it wasn't just my daddy who was killed in that explosion in San Francisco. There were 320 other Navy men, too. The Port Chicago disaster, they called it. But didn't nobody bother to count the four of us, Clarice, Annette, Mama, and me, here in Chicago. Because that explosion that happened 2,341 miles away just about ripped us apart, too. Before my daddy left this earth, I never thought much about him. And after he left, he was all I could think about. Reverend Maynard held a service at Emmanuel Baptist Church for my daddy, the first Sunday in August, same day as communion. They had every one of my daddy's pictures from our apartment up in front of the church, on the pulpit, where the casket would have been if we had one. Reverend Maynard preaches so long on Sunday, Mama has to poke me with her elbow to keep me awake. But this Sunday, I wondered if he finally ran out of things to say, because it seemed like bravery and honor and country were the only words he knew. We sat in the front row where the deacons usually sit, and even though it was hot, Mama, Clarice, and Annette wore hats and gloves with their black dresses. The lace from Mama's glove scratched me when I held on to her hand, but I didn't let go. After Reverend Maynard finished talking about what a good man our daddy was, and after all the amens and God bless him from everyone in the pews behind us, and after the choir sang, "Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we're going to see the King." Two soldiers walked up front and stood in front of us. They folded up a flag into a triangle and handed it to Mama. Mama didn't reach for it like she was supposed to, but Clarice did and nodded to thank them. They saluted us and turned and walked out down the aisle and out the front doors. Mama didn't do any more falling out like she did that first day we heard about the explosion, but she didn't do much of anything else either. She cooked, straightened up as best as she could, always kissed us every morning and night. But she looked like she was half asleep, even when she was wide awake. I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for joining me today of my reading of Being Clem. I hope you will enjoy the rest of the book. Thanks again. Bye-bye.